Good evening. I'm Genevieve Pastor-Cohen, and I'm here with Captain Walle and also Michelle Milam with regard to the preliminary evacuation pre-plans. And we were very grateful for Zone Haven. They were able to help us put together a preliminary map. What you see on your screen is um, the El Sobrante, May Valley, El Sobrante Hills area. You probably are very familiar with this. The good thing about this, again, this is only preliminary because we need to plug in more information where we're revising some of these zones because we want to make them smaller because of the number of structures that are in each. For instance, this here, this area here, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. When I click on it, I could see how many people live there, daytime and nighttime, how many vehicles there are in that area, how large it is, as well as how many structures are in here. What we're trying to do is to reduce the number of structures that are in each evacuation zone. And that way the traffic will be better managed. And essentially, from this information, we'll be building a pre-plan. And again, this is a preliminary map. And when I hit the evacuation pre-plan, it'll look kind of like this. It'll show that particular area. And this will be, once this is done, it'll be shared with our community. And it'll show us that who's the lead, fire and police, and any critical facilities that might be located there, and any special zones in that area as well that we will need to pay particular attention to. And then it'll go on to I realize this is blank. It will identify traffic control points and who's staffing it, some potential routes in and out, because in evacuation, we want you to have several ways to get out. And also those are potential arrival points. And this will be either a temporary refuge area, depending upon the size of the event. It might be, I'm working with the school district right now, and it might be Vianza. It might be another facility further down the hill in terms of a arrival point for a refuge area. Then when it comes to sheltering, if we have a lot of people who need shelter, then the city will open up a shelter for this purpose. But this is something that we wanted to share with you because Zone Haven is able to help us at this point. And what I wanted to show you is what a fully populated map looks like. I'm going to take you to, and what the map will look like. Especially, you're all familiar with the Santa Cruz fire, right? And so in Santa Cruz, with this particular map, what will happen is that if there is evacuation, the evacuation zone will be red. This means you have to get out now. When there's a warning, the area is yellow. That means you have a little bit more time, but you don't have to evacuate right then and there. So, and the cool thing here too is I'm going to bring it over to San Mateo, to South San Francisco, for instance, this zone here. I'm going to go ahead and make it larger, and you'll be able to see what kind of how we could populate it. I'll go to this zone here, and okay. Oops, let me do this. And what happens is that for that area that I popped open, it has the evacuation, each evacuation zone has a special area. This isn't, here we go. Let me undo, okay. This is South San Francisco. And again, you can see what the population is during the day and night, and how many vehicles are there, how many structures are in there. And so these, and when it comes to evacuation details, it will show us a lot more information. It shows where all the stoplights are. and all the different kinds of details that we would need. This pre-plan, what it looks like, I'm going to go further up the way where there's more residential. I'll go up here. This is area 006. Let me get off of here. So here, I'll make it smaller so you can see it. You can see that there's the stoplights here, and I'll go into the evacuation details again. And there's the ID, it has the ID in terms of the zone, where the evacuation facilities are, what the, how many vehicles there are per address and how many people there are per address, so that we know what's going on there and what some traffic points are. The very cool thing about this too is, let me go back here. That blank pre-plan that you saw before for your area that we're going to be working on, this is what it looks like when it's populated. For an example area, you can see, again, the basic information, evacuation facilities, some special considerations with regards to this area. You can see it says densely populated area with numerous multifamily residential buildings. Evacuation will affect freeway traffic. Western border includes wildland urban interface. So that's information that will be needed. And then moving on, you can see how the traffic control points are and how it's going to be staffed, and also potential routes that will be taken, as well as arrival points where they will be directing people who are evacuating. So this is a really wonderful tool. What happens is that coming back to what happens is that when with the Santa Cruz fire, the incident commanders for various it was a unified command, so there's incident commanders representing police and fire and the county and the cities, and they work together to decide what's the best route, what areas do we need to evacuate. So let me bring you back up to where you are. Oops, sorry, I'm sorry. Your eyes might be going crazy, right? Oops.
Take your time, no rush.
Okay. So this is what it looks like for now, and this is what it looks like for satellite. And while we were talking earlier today with Captain Walle, we were talking about ways to evacuate. And Captain Walle, you may want to chime in that it's like, because we have to look at the ridge and depending upon the situation, this tool will allow us to know how many people are there, how many structures are there, main routes out, and you will know what those main routes out so you don't clog the streets. And what I'm going to do is turn it over to Captain Walle to talk about this area and how, with a scenario in terms of how it would be evacuated. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. So for a smaller scale incidents, it's pretty typical for our officers to respond to support fire for like an inner perimeter traffic control post, so residents aren't driving over fire hoses, right? So as we talk about larger scale incidents, we're going to be looking to expanding that zone. So we'll be setting an outer perimeter in order to prevent traffic from entering the area. We'll establish unified command posts with fire, meaning that we'll work collectively and try to decide whether or not we're going to conduct evacuation, really depending on the size of the fire, terrain, wind direction, all that stuff. So the fire department will actually be the ones that will be making the determination whether or not to evacuate. And that's where the police department's role will be primary in conducting these evacuations. Genevieve may or may not talk later about how we'll communicate that via social media and things of that nature, our community warning system. But our role, our primary role is going to be establishing these evacuation routes based on the needs of the fire department. The reason why we wanted more input on the zoning of these different zones is I want to make sure that the neighborhoods along the ridge lines are smaller, they're prioritized. So we could easily identify those neighborhoods that are closer to the ridges that is likely going to be where the fire is going to be moving along. So we coordinate already a lot with our local other law enforcement agencies for crime problems. We have really good established relationships with them. We're also reaching out now to their Office of Emergency Services coordinators in order to work out these routes. So for a wildfire in the May Valley area, there's really the biggest way out is going to be San Paulo Dam Road. We'll be prioritizing that as an egress route as long as fire is okay with that, because we also have to also consider which route will the emergency vehicles be taken in order to get to the fire. So a lot of this really has to be fluid. There's no real playbook on here. We have a lot of checklists, but of course, a lot of it's going to depend on a lot of different variables. But at this point now, our primary focus is going to be to stop people from coming into the neighborhood. So if you're at work and you hear of a fire that's occurring in May Valley, just recognize that you're likely not going to be able to get in. And please don't wait for us to tell you to evacuate. If you see a lot of smoke, then please evacuate on your own. And I'm sure you guys are probably talking about like go bags and stuff like that. So keep those handy, keep your car fueled up, and listen out for further directions from us. We're planning on pre-positioning cones out in the May Valley area to help us better establish these egress routes. I was actually telling Genevieve that I was stuck in traffic in Fairfield trying to get through the last fire, and there's a lot of confusion because I didn't know where to go. And there's people out there waving their hands without a whole lot of direction. And I was telling Genevieve, had they had traffic cones, maybe they could have more easily funneled traffic with less officers working these checkpoints. So the software will be very helpful also, because it'll allow us to more strategically evacuate neighborhoods. So not trying to evacuate May Valley at once, right? We could focus on the ridge lines first and then work our way down, let's say toward Valley View Road. So are there any questions?
Are you done with the presentation?
Genevieve, how about you? Have anything else to add?
Yeah, again, from what Cheryl Miller presented the other night, it's so important for everyone to be signed up with NIXL as well as the county's Community Warning Center system, because that's how we are going to notify you. When there is when we get word of a situation where we need to provide information to you right away, I will be using NIXL. And then for any, first of all, red flag warnings, evacuation warning, as well as evacuation orders. And community warning system will be doing the same for the warnings and the orders. So it's so important to make sure that all your devices are registered, and then so that you could receive notification early. And then I understand too that Cheryl, as well as some of the other community members who came to speak, talked about preparedness, getting to know your neighbors, getting to know within your blocks who would need extra help in terms of getting them right off the hill to evacuate. That is so very important because you're right there. So again, refer to what our presenters in the past couple of weeks have been providing you, as well as Fire Marshal Govan's wildfire preparedness and evacuation plan. All of those pieces are all part of the pie. So also too, I wanted to find out if Michelle Milam, you're on, is there anything you'd like to add with regards to even public information or even the neighborhood watch teams?
Yeah, I would. And I see that there's a lot of questions in the chat as well. So I just hold on if you're in the chat. We're going to try to get to all those questions in there. So the first thing I would say is just reiterating what Genevieve said is make sure that all of your devices are registered. That's something that you can share with your neighbors. You can share through your neighborhood watch groups. If you have a neighborhood watch and you've set up a neighborhood watch with us, with me, and with the city, you already probably have a communication system of how to get information out to your neighbors. So that would be a great thing and a tool to get out. Genevieve and I can work together to actually probably put together some bullet points that we can have so that you can share that with your neighbors during this time, and people can hold on to that. And maybe there are other ways that we can help make sure that information is accessible. I would encourage everyone who's not involved with either Neighborhood Watch or your Neighborhood Watch maybe is active, but it's not CERT trained, I realize is that, right now in the pandemic, it's a little bit difficult to do some of the search, but there still is some of that good training that's available online. And those are things that we can share with each other to help be prepared. And then finally, I think Genevieve's suggestion about go bags is really important. I've lived in fire zones pretty much, I would say, for half of my life. So I live in Beat 9 now. Before I lived in the Oakland Hills. I've come from a family where we've always been aware of the high probability that if there's a fire, we would be evacuated. And I think it's important to sit down with your family and your household and come up with a plan of how you're going to deal with things. For example, if you're at work and somebody is at home, how will you communicate with them? You need to come up with some kind of a family plan and a strategy to be able to know that it's most likely that they're not going to be able to get back to their to the house. So how will you make sure that you communicate and touch bases with each other once you get out? So those are the kinds of things that you can do with your family. Those are the kinds of things that you can do in sharing this information with your neighbors and connecting with Neighborhood Watch, and just neighbors that you connect with who may not have access to online stuff. I mean, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I know that we have firefighters who have gone door to door to hand out materials so that people can have those materials in their households. And Genevieve, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the plans for that later on. And I know that there are people who maybe aren't technology savvy or they don't have access. So we have to figure out ways to help get that out to them. The city can provide some of that information, but we really also do need the help of neighbors. If you have a neighbor that may not be able to participate on this meeting, either on YouTube or something like that, is that you share that information, the information that we're talking about with them, so that they can get registered. So those are some of the suggestions that I have. There were some good suggestions in the chat. If you need to sign up for Nixle, www.nixle.com, you can sign up for online warnings, and you want to text your zip code to 888-777. And then Genevieve put in their community warning system. You want to make sure that you're able to sign up for that. That's also in the chat box. There's quite a few questions in the chat box for you, Genevieve, and Captain Walle, that we can also go through, including questions about the pre-plan required for each area, for every area, and the role of the temporary arrival point. So I'm going to let you all answer those questions, but I just wanted to at least share some of those tips.
I would like to add some questions to the list of questions you're going to answer. The most important one is, when is this zone haven going to be purchased? When is it going to be ready to be deployed? How long the training for it takes for our police department, fire department, and also is the unincorporated portion of El Sobrante will have it or not? Because if only one portion has it, the rest don't have it, it's not going to work like that.
To answer your question with regards to zone haven or a zone haven-like application, there's going to be an RFP that the county is going to put out because they just received a grant. It'll cover all of Contra Costa County and the cities. So right now, we're blessed to be able to get Zone Haven's help to at least draw out our evacuation zones. And so probably in 2-3 months, they will be working on the other areas, and they stepped up to help us put it together as well. So this is, again, preliminary. Once we refine the zone maps, then we'll be able to plug in the additional information that we need to make it more effective. Also too, just so that you know, and you're looking at your screen, you'll see that the different areas, different zones have a coding system. So this is RCHE031. Don't get glued to this because it might be another number, but when we send a message, evacuation warning, we'll give you the number, this number, so that you know that that's the area that we were concentrating on, that will be evacuating or will receive the warning. And also if if an area will be evacuating, we'll put that code into the NIXL or the CWS, Community Warning System, so that you'll know. And these will be published so that you will all have it. So we're working with Zone Haven right now, and hopefully they'll be able to really kick in with us within the next month or two.
Thank you. I have one more question, and then after me is Joni and then Marilyn. That is, if God forbid there's a wildfire, it's going to involve Berkeley, El Cerrito, maybe Oakland. So seems like the county of Alameda needs to have it, or we need to coordinate somehow exit and entrance ramps of the freeway all the way to the south. Have you thought about it?
The good thing is in our basic plan, we are collaborating and coordinating with the various agencies that would be involved. And so that's, I know that Chief Shepard had talked about that, because this is part of the state system of the Incident Command System and SEMS, the Standardized Emergency Management System, which has been in place for many, many years now. And it allows us to work together, have mutual aid, and coordinate with other agencies where the impact zone is, so that we could strategize and provide and lay down some tactics so that we could respond efficiently.
Okay.
So that our communities, that the main thing for this this kind of coordinating system, SEMS and ICS, is to save lives, property, and the environment. And of course, lives are at the top.
Thank you. Joni, please.
Okay, with all due respect to our guest speakers, I feel like we are going backwards. I have asked for months, and I've been on these meetings and gone at it every way I can to get some detail. This map that you're showing us, first of all, we do not have Zone Haven yet. You can't even find Castro Ranch Road on this very vague thing you're showing us. And we have asked, and I thought tonight, and I asked many of my neighbors, and I'm almost embarrassed that I asked them, because they said, gee, they're going to give us that report tonight about what the overall best thinking on our evacuation routes really is. We are not getting that. This map is more vague than what is put in that 32-page document that we received that still doesn't give us really an evacuation route. And I'm just very disappointed. We haven't heard one new thing tonight, except that the county is going to put an RFP out for this Zone Haven light. The fire marshal himself said the city doesn't have the budget for it. It's 3 years down the line, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sorry, I'm just very upset that we do not have an evacuation plan for our area. Thank you.
Would anyone like to answer that, or should we go to the next question? Marilyn, please.
Hi. Oh, I totally get how Joni feels frustrated. I'm glad to see how Zone Haven would work. I know the county has something out, so it sort of sounds, and maybe you could clarify, Genevieve, or Fire Chief Walle. I'm a little confused as to whether the county is going to buy it, or is Richmond going to buy it, or are both going to buy it? And that makes a difference because I live on the edge of Richmond, and I know damn well that people are going to die in unincorporated trying to get out, and they're going to come through our community if they're lucky. But I really worry more about them than I do about me in Richmond, even though I'm on the edge and so likely to be burned up with that my house will get burned up. So can you tell me first, if you can clarify that? The other thing is we're still not addressing likely, shall we say, secondary evacuation routes, because in this area, we have a lot of trees that will fall on the roads, whether it's an earthquake or a fire situation or heavy rains. And I keep saying we have to identify them so we can all coordinate a maintenance plan.
Okay. Marilyn, thank you for your question. 2 questions. So just so that I know that it's clear, you wanted to know about when is Zone Haven going to come on board and who's covering, who's paying for it?
More than anything else, I want to make sure both county and Richmond are covered by it.
It is, yes.
Good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Yes, it's covered. Yeah, it covers the whole county and all the cities in the county. And so that's the beauty of it. And the cool thing right now is Zone Haven has been reaching out to us, and we've finally reached out to them as well to work together to start building these evacuation free plans. Again, this is preliminary. And when I showed you the evacuation free plan sheet, it showed information, it highlights information that we need to know about particular evacuation zones, like what you see here on the screen. And it talks about routes out and alternate routes out as well. So because as I was talking to Captain Walle earlier, and when it comes to an emergency, anything could happen. You could have the best made plans, and there are times when you have to throw out the plan because things happen. Mother Nature is interesting; she pulls things on you, and then.
But actually, that is exactly what my concern is, Genevieve. I mean, we can't tell with current data, but Sobrante Avenue is a single road that is fed by many, many circular paths, and it's the only way out for those people. I mean, it's really not to say that there aren't other death trap aspects to that area, but it feeds down either into my portion of Richmond, which is Meadowbrook Fieldcrest, to get out, or they're going to go down Sobrante to Appian and then hopefully be able to evacuate from there. But if you look at Sobrante's further north than what you have on the map, go north, go north, go north. You're getting there. To the right a little bit. And see Valley View Elementary School. Go up a little bit and, oh, I see, I have my participants thing in the way. If you see, there's the, gosh, Sobrante Avenue looks like it's a nothing road. I'm telling you, that's a major thoroughfare. Look at the triangle of Appian and Valley View. And you go up and you'll see Sobrante going up the hill to the right. That, do you see? You see what it does? It has all these curly cues. And I'm telling you, there are trees going 45 degrees over the road, multiple trees, and people are gonna die trying to get out of there. So I actually think identifying these roads is a really, really critical factor.
And that's part of the pre-planning. That's why what you see here is simply preliminary. As a matter of fact, Captain Walle, Fire Marshal Govan, and I, and our battalion chief sat down and we made some of those areas more defined because they know what the streets are like. And so they're incorporating that kind of knowledge into our pre-plan.
Can I if I don't want to steer away from the point that's being made, but I do see a couple of things that have popped up in the chat, and I heard Joni's point. I'm new coming to the game, and I'm not a law enforcement sworn officer. My role is more with community mobilization and education. But I do want to say that I can hear what Joni's frustration is about looking at this. And you as residents, knowing this area very intimately, having some questions about specific roads and streets and how they would be handled. And that kind of balanced with, it's just kind of like earthquake planning at the same time, is that you can come up with a plan and then something can completely change that plan. And there could be a redirection. And so then communication actually becomes an important factor to notify people if there is a change. Would it be possible in this whole planning process? I don't know if there's room for this in the Richmond part or the county part, for there to be some resident input, on the plan, because what we're seeing is a very general map. And obviously they're going to distill it down, based upon the input of those who are involved. Is that something that is possible so that people's concerns can get addressed?
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you very much. Before I move on to the next question by Doreen and then Linda, I would like to ask the name of the Contra Costa County Fire Chief and a time estimate for purchasing whatever, Zone Haven or something like that, so we can invite him in a time frame close to the time of deployment and ask more questions about it.
Sure, that's Chief Bashur.
Okay.
It's Contra Costa County Fire.
And when do you think they're going to have it?
They will probably have it before the end of the year.
End of the year. Wonderful. And can we have your word that some residents will participate in tailoring the software with respect to the needs of the community?
Once we get to the next step, because right now this is totally preliminary. These don't look like the zones that we have drawn out, because Zone Haven is working with our more refined map, because with Captain Walle's input and Fire Marshal Govan's and the battalion chiefs, they know these areas. And so we're trying to make it so that you could safely escape, safely evacuate, because that's key.
Okay, you did not answer my question. Will we have participation in tailoring the software program purchase to tailor it according to the needs of the community?
You mean the map itself, what you see right here, the map?
No, it's not the map. There's so many things, like the street that Marilyn is pointing to, Castro Ranch Road, is a one-way thing. So many details. We would like to have input into making it specific to our needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is all, we could also incorporate this into the into Cheryl's project as well, so that we don't have a lot of overlap, so that, because I understand that you are identifying leadership teams for your area. So this would fit perfectly into that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Genevieve?
Yes, Captain Walle.
It would be helpful, and that's something that Genevieve spoke about briefly, about the special considerations. And yes, that is the kind of community level stuff that we could definitely use help on. In regards to the drawing of the neighborhood boundaries, maybe not. We'll definitely take your considerations, in mind. The problem that I have with Zone Haven is some of these zones were too big, and for our officers to evacuate some of these zones at this size would just be nearly impossible. A lot of these boundaries that they drew weren't even along like major roads. So in an event of a fire, I need to tell an officer, evacuate north of this street, south of that street, west of that street. They need to know exactly where to go. So we need to make sure that these zones are drawn in a smart manner. But I would definitely welcome your feedback once we get these up, and also your input too.
Thank
But we want to definitely make sure these zones work for all of us.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Doreen, please go ahead.
My questions are basically follow-ups to Joni's questions, what I heard, questions that Joni asked that I think went unanswered. So I still would like a little more detail about exactly who's going to purchase Zone Haven and whether there is an actual commitment to doing that, and whether that's documented anywhere. More details, please. And I would like more details about what the current evacuation plan is for our area. So I'm specifically interested in Castro Ranch Road, Amend, et cetera. But I just, I may have missed something, but all I heard was San Pablo Dam Road and use of cones, and that doesn't sound like an evacuation plan to me. And I thought that we were getting together today to hear what the evacuation plan was going to be for our area.
So Doreen, when I spoke earlier about evacuation routes, I prefaced it with it all depends. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you right now to go down a certain road when that road's on fire. So all that stuff is going to be made at the incident commander level. So if there were to be a fire right now, I would suggest that you get out whichever way you think you can. We're going to send you as best information as we can as we get it through Nixle, through the county community warning system, via radio, via TV as possible, Facebook, everything. But at this point now, for me to sit down and tell you go this direction in case of a fire would be very irresponsible for me to do that. But this is why we're working on Zone Haven. So hopefully we could evacuate neighborhoods in a more organized manner. And we're not just telling everybody, get out now. We could do it more orderly, and especially around the ridge lines. If there's a fast moving fire, we want to make sure that we focus all our resources along those ridge lines where it's going to be more likely where it's going to spread into the neighborhoods.
And what is being done, if I can just ask a follow-up question, what is being done to make sure that what you would anticipate as routes of emergency evacuation, which I presume would include Castro Ranch Road, San Pablo Dam Road, Amend, et cetera, are being kept clear so that there are not trees that can fall on them, blocking people's evacuation routes, and vegetation that is too close to the streets. Particularly since I believe that, at least if you're in the Carriage Hills area, all of our evacuation routes in and out of the area go through property that is not part of Richmond.
Yes, very important points, and that was going to be a part of our it's going to be really just going down the streets and looking at those kinds of things. You know, the width of the road, where the hydrants are, you know, where the traffic signs are, where the traffic signals are, the type of vegetation that's surrounding the road. So a lot of that's going to be taken into consideration and then plotted in those consideration boxes in those zones. So it's definitely going to be a lot of work, and we're committed to doing it. We spoke today at our probably first meeting really to sit down and talk about these zones. That's something that we'll actually have to get out in the field and actually look at stuff. We can't make a determination on the map, and that's really where your input is going to be valuable coming into what do we need to know about your neighborhood. So that will definitely be very important to hear from you.
So Captain Walle, have you received additional funding since, you know, I was part of the phone conversation that that Chief French had, where it was mostly focused on the lack of money and lack of personnel. Has there been some change that is going to now allow you to have personnel and funding to accomplish these tasks?
No, we like everything else. We have to work with what we have. We're not going to wait for money to come in our coffers in order for us to find a safe evacuation route for people. And we're talking about one neighborhood. We actually have to do this for the whole city. But because of the recent wildfires, and that's why this is a priority. Obviously, we have to worry about a Chevron explosion. Got to worry about the CDC facility, having some kind of problems there. So we have a lot of infrastructure in the city that we have to focus on. But right now, we're focusing on your particular neighborhood.
Doreen, you had a question also about Zone Haven. The county received a grant for the purchase of it and the licensing of it. It'll be, so that's where the funding is coming from for this particular, what you see on the screen, and for the support that comes, that'll come along with this particular application.
Thank you.
And the grant is enough money to cover it for the whole county, including the cities?
Yes.
And has a contract been entered into yet?
Right now, not yet. But the good thing is that Zone Haven is doing this for us pro bono. And they've worked with other areas.
They gave us the maps.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. These maps that you're showing us is what was pro bono.
Yeah.
So what would happen if there was a fire tomorrow?
Sorry, Jean. Linda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll put your name for next question. Linda, go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to know, because I live in Wildcat Canyon and we are unincorporated Richmond. Will Zone Haven help our area? Are we included in this area of Zone Haven?
Yes, you'll be included. Yeah, because we know that, for instance, you could see this area here where it's Richmond and then there's county. Where Zone Haven will be covering the unincorporated areas as well.
But we're on the other side. We're entirely on the other side.
You mean this side?
We're down off Park, McBride, on the other side.
Park and McBride, yes. Park and McBride.
Okay, yes.
So right where it says East Richmond Heights, go up a little bit. It's right at the Alvarado entrance. That's where Park and McBride are.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just add something. I'm not sure. I think the way it works is that such a program goes hand in hand with a notification system. So what's in place, we're going to invite everyone over again to make sure that the notification system for the city of Richmond and unincorporated area and San Pablo and everything are well coordinated. So evacuation will happen smoothly. By the way, I feel like I have not received my answer about Alameda having it or how to coordinate, but we can follow up because we don't have it yet. We can follow up on that. Jean, you have a question? Go ahead, please.
I do, thank you. So I understand that this will take a while to, sorry, now the phone of course is ringing. I understand that this will take a while to settle. And it takes a while after there's an RFP and all of those things to come to agreements, and then there's loading of data and testing and all of those things. But I'm not clear. So Captain Walle said you would want to take the best route out if you didn't have any other information. And what we heard on Tuesday was you will go exactly where they tell you to go. So I'm not sure I understand what would happen if we had a fire next week.
So again, if you're waiting for the police department to tell you which way to go when your neighbor is on fire, it's probably going to be too late. So if you see your neighborhood on fire, you need to get out as quickly as you can, because the officer's focus initially is going to be on getting traffic from coming into your neighborhood. And then we're going to start doing, if we have to, again, this is going to be at the direction of the fire department, whether we have to do house-to-house notifications. We'll be making notifications via our PA systems, or our public announcement system in our patrol cars. If we have to go door to door, it'll be a coordinated effort, not only Richmond, but responding agencies. Rosters had this experience going out Santa Rosa. They did the same thing out there. They went out there and just knocked on door to doors and got people out of their homes. But this will be at the direction of the fire department based on the character of the fire and where it's moving, things like that.
Thank you. So this software will be great when it's implemented, but it wouldn't help us next week, right? Except that I suppose you could look at it.
Correct. Yeah. Don't wait for this to tell you to get out of your house if your neighborhood's on fire.
So
and don't
I
wait for
wouldn't,
us.
but I'm interested in what you guys would do if there was a fire next week, since we've only talked about Zone Haven tonight and it is easily 6 months away.
So if there was like a fire right now, again, I press it all depends. Okay. I mean, the first thing we're going to do, like I spoke about earlier, at every fire, just about, we're always there with the fire department, blocking off roads, making sure that cars aren't driving over fire hoses. If the fire was to start to spread, depending on the direction of the fire, that's when we start doing notifications to get out. At that point, we'd be contacting Genevieve to start making those NIXL alerts, making the community warning system alerts, determining whether or not we need to establish an EOC, an Emergency Operations Center, determining whether we need to have shelters, contacting Red Cross, things of that nature. If the fire started impacting roads, we may call CHP to block off roads. We have, we deal with law enforcement agencies on a daily basis, working together hand in hand for other crime problems. We'd ask them to come out and help. We may even have all our officers working the fire and have other agencies working the streets for us. So again, it really all depends. It'd be very fluid, and we have a lot of practice in working with very fluid situations. I'm pretty confident that we'd be able to handle it really well. We have a great response, especially in the Bay Area. A lot of our officers have responded to a lot of the wildfires throughout the state, so they have a lot of experience in dealing with evacuations.
Thank you.
I would like to urge our guests, if they have the time, please take a look at the questions in the chat, because unfortunately I'm not able to. I would like to also request that they consider having a drill after you said it's going to be purchased by the end of the year. Hopefully then the software needs to be built and everything. It's going to take another 3-4 months, I guess. Hopefully we'll have it in place before the beginning of the fire season, and we are seriously requesting for a drill. We need to have a fire drill so we know what to do when it happens.
So Helia, this is Michelle. I think part of the issue with I don't know if you can see the questions in the chat, is I'm not sure how those are being moderated so that the speakers can see them. But there are some questions in the chat for that hopefully with the time we have can be answered.
Maybe you could read them.
I wouldn't mind reading them. I just didn't want to interrupt the facilitation.
Go ahead. If you see questions, Michelle, please read them if you think they can be answered.
Okay. All right. So just going way back to some questions that we had from the beginning. Sorry, I had to scroll back. Let's scroll back to this because I think we had some questions. Are there any consideration being taken for orderly neighborhoods that have one way in and one way out? Anybody can answer that.
I'm not really sure if I understand the question.
I think the question revolves around consideration being taken for neighborhoods that only have one way in and one way out. How will we go through that mapping process and be able to identify those neighborhoods that maybe only have one way in and one way out?
So yes, so that was actually a part of what Genevieve and I were talking earlier, along with the fire officials in regards to the zones. Obviously, the one way in, one way out neighborhoods are going to be a consideration, especially if they're near the ridge lines, most importantly. So yes, that'll be a part of those evacuation considerations on that pre-plan.
Okay, and the next question is from Maxine, and she's addressing this to the fire chief, who I'm assuming the fire chief is not here tonight. This is Captain Walle from the police department. Can address the amount of time that it takes from when 911 fire calls are made to when a NIXL alert goes out to residents. Maybe that's something that Genevieve can answer. Is how long does it take for a NIXL alert generally to be addressed in this situation?
As soon as the 911 call is called in, the good thing is that in the police department communication center, we have trained dispatchers who are also trained in doing the NIXL. So they could, as soon as they receive the call and get all the details, they could post a alert on Nixle.
And there's a follow-up to that, Genevieve, and it comes from Maryland. Why aren't we getting red flag warnings through the Richmond Nixle? So they want to know about red flag warnings in Richmond Nixle.
I would like to add to that Cheryl said it's important to have red flag warnings and be prepared for the next step. So why don't we get it?
Okay. Yes, we could start doing that to put out the warnings. There are sometimes red flag. There's two levels of it. There's a red flag day, just to be aware, and then there's the warning. So what I could do is plug in a red flag warning via Nixle.
Okay, thank you, Genevieve. Going through, I know we're getting close to time. I want to get as many questions through the chat as I could. When can we expect there to be boots on the ground to look at the actual areas? Captain Walle talked about a field inspection. That comes from Gail. Captain Walle, can you answer that?
That's really going to depend probably on Genevieve, depending on when these zones are determined. Any idea, Genevieve?
Right. Zone Haven is working right now in refining the zones, and they'll probably have that done within the next day or so, and then we could start going from there.
And as a follow-up to that, and I know this is as a grant, there's an RFP process. This Zone Haven may or may not get the contract, but this is a really good starting point, and we're going to pretty much start right away, especially because we're nearing fire season. So regardless of what vendor we end up going with, the zones are probably pretty much going to stay the same. They're going to be neighborhood based. They're going to be based on major thoroughfares, so people will be more easily able to identify them. So we can start probably fairly soon, and I'll talk to Genevieve about that.
Thank you. And the follow-up with that, there was a comment is that it doesn't feel like it's a priority. Perhaps that's because, you know, people kind of want a timeline of when the county's going to release the request for proposal. Do we know when that's going to be?
I don't have that information. I could find out.
I would also suggest that that's a way for neighbors to advocate with the county. I mean, obviously they have to go through their RFP process, you know, in the middle of fire season and the pandemic and release that, but maybe that's something that the county can provide on their request for proposal, because they put it out for request and then obviously somebody comes back in for bid and gets the contract to complete the work. So maybe we can find out that information for the meeting so that we can update everybody on a timeline, which is, I think, what people were asking for.
Right. Just
and there were some
to that, just to add what you said, Michelle, the one thing about this particular application, it's unique, and Zone Haven is probably the only business that has this kind of application. So there's a very good possibility that they will be the vendor because they're so unique.
Yeah, they probably will end up being sole source, I would imagine, but that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Going to the next question kind of slash comment that I see that's a question more of a question is part of it, effective evacuation is communication. Mm-hmm. How will communication happens if cell towers don't work during a power failure? So Genevieve, I don't know if you want to talk about the different kinds of ways, because this has come up quite a few times that residents can get alerted, and you know, ways that they can get alerted in event there is a power failure. Right.
With regards to power failures, there's also radio and ham radio operators. I know that I sent a list of ham radio operators to Zohela, and there's some ham radio operators in your area. And the good thing is that they usually embed themselves in the neighborhood watch or even CERT teams. And I know that, let's see, that there's several folks up in your area that are trying to build those teams right now. And so that would be another way of being informed, because they would receive it. And also too, radio, not battery operated radios. Remember those transistor radios we used to have when we were kids? That we could certainly Right now they call them the weather radios. That would be a way that you could hear as well. So
also, Genevieve, Cheryl mentioned that there would be shortwave local radio stations broadcasting news. What are those radio stations we can listen to?
generally, KCBS is so reliable. So those are radio stations that we usually have our residents listen to because they pick up on what we're doing quickly.
Can I make a suggestion that perhaps a list of these kind of resources, it may already exist, be distilled down. We can share them with our watch groups and Beat 9 most definitely, but maybe shared amongst the neighborhood, and then other questions that you all might have, like a question sheet. That way that people can, get their question answered, if it's a question that already has an answer to it. And it would help, I don't know, Sohelia, if we could pull together some of these questions and put them into some kind of a sheet. I'd be willing to work with you guys on that. If that's something.
You. I'll take you on that offer, and something like frequent questions. Great.
Yeah, frequently asked questions. That way we don't have to go over the same thing again. We can make sure that we answer it and we can all share the same information.
Wonderful.
The next question is, how do you go door to door for people who are deaf and hearing impaired? And then similarly, how do you help people who are blind or mobility impaired to get out? That comes from Doreen.
Yeah, again, when Cheryl, the information she shared, one of the things is the neighbor helping neighbor. So it's really important for within your neighborhood to get to know who would need that extra help if they have those types of health conditions, so that you could help them. They get to know you. You are friends, so that you could help them evacuate. Again, it's at the neighborhood level.
Okay. And then as a follow-up question, I think we answered that question about 911, the time between 911 and a NIXL alert going out to residents. There were a couple comments saying, confirming yes, that the residents would like to have a drill. And then also a comment, please do flag the red flag warnings. Other nearby cities not only send out the red flag warning, they add plain text for the preparation. Jean writes, maybe John Joya can help. And I think you're talking about the timeline for the RFP process. Yeah, you can always contact your county supervisor. I'm sure that, that's what they're there for, to find out what the timeline is of when it gets on the board agenda.
I would like to add that, sorry, Michelle, if I may interject, that we already contacted John and suggested that we would like to have a demo. He said he'd be interested, and we told his office, and we contacted Zone Haven too, because we wanted him to support the idea of having such a thing in place as soon as possible. We were told by his office that he would not be in the position to make a decision, but he could support such a thing. So we are in the process of arranging such a demo at the Wildcat Canyon meeting, where some fire chiefs from different parts of Contra Costa are present as well, West Contra Costa.
Yes, and I see that also there are some folks who may want to, like Marilyn, may want to work on the frequently asked questions. Yeah, I think the thing for frequently asked questions is I'm trying to take screenshots. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not working with high tech right now. I'm working with a cell phone, but I'm trying to take screenshots of what I see in the chat. So I think if there's a place where I'll try to capture what I can from the chat here of questions and frequently asked questions that we can get some answers to, that we can get out to you guys by maybe your next meeting, whenever I don't know how soon it is to you meet. And there's other people who want to, have some input on that and questions. That's something that we could do. Yeah, thank you. If you could share the chat with me, that would help me out. So, yeah, I can save my eyes a little bit. Not quite yet losing my vision, but, but working on it. From being on Zoom. So I think that was it. There are some other questions just going back. I know about specific plans for Carriage Hills, for example, what the evacuation plan would specifically be. But at least from what I'm looking at here, there's a couple of key points. One, the need for a drill. 2, the need for some frequently asked questions to be addressed. 3, the timeline on the project of when it's going to go forward. And, also for, having maybe some resident input on, some of those areas that are of high concern. So those are, I think that's hopefully summing up the chat.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate